Good morning to everyone, including my co-hosts here this morning. My name is Adam Pearl. I'm president and CEO of Art Pride New Jersey. I'll do a self-ID here. I am a white male in my mid-40s with short brown hair, and this morning I'm wearing a blue shirt with white polka dots, and I am outside in my backyard today, so I have an umbrella and some trees behind me. I encourage everyone at some point today to get outside and enjoy this beautiful Jersey summer. Stay hydrated. I have some opening notes here, but I want to let my co-hosts here introduce themselves, and then I'll come back. But I will say at the very beginning here that closed captioning is available using the buttons at the bottom of your Zoom screen if you need it. But I'll come back with some more top of the notes, but I'll pass it to John to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Adam. Good morning, everyone. I'm John McEwen. I'm the executive director of the New Jersey Theater Alliance, and my description is I'm a cis white male in my early 60s, because I don't really know what to say with regards to age anymore. And I have brown and silver hair parted on the side with a brown and silver mustache and beard. I have clear framed glasses. I'm wearing a pink polo shirt, and I'm coming to you today from the lovely Asbury Park, New Jersey, land of the Lenni Lenape, and delighted to be here. And I guess I'll pass it to Erica.
Hello, good morning, everybody. I'm Erica Nagel, she, her pronouns. I am a white woman in my early 40s. I'm wearing kind of a slate green shirt with a zipper on it. I have a blurred background because I'm zooming in from visiting my parents, and I'm in their music room, which is full of clutter, but very cozy. And I am on Nipmuc and hold on, let me make sure I say it right. Nipmuc and Pecumtuck land here in central Massachusetts. And I'm the deputy director of the New Jersey Theater Alliance. David?
Good morning, everybody. I'm David Rees, the Director of Consulting and Deputy CEO at Baker Richards, based over in the UK. So I'm actually coming to you from Cambridge. I am a white man in my late 30s with blonde hair, short blonde hair, a stubbly blonde beard, and what I think is a salmon pink polo shirt. That's at least what I was told when I bought it. I also have a blurred background because I'm actually ended up in my bedroom as all of my kids have kicked me out of my former office. So delighted to be here this morning.
Thank you very much for joining us, to Erica and David and John. Appreciate you being here. We're going to jump into the presentation here, but I did want to let folks know to keep an eye on the chat. We're going to drop a few links in there over the course of this discussion. We also have the Q&A feature, so if you have questions along the way, please put them there. We're going to save some time at the end for questions and answers, but if you do have them along the way, ask them, and we'll get to them as we can. And then the last thing I wanted to say for everyone is that we are recording this. So we're going to make this available for others who couldn't attend today or who haven't got a chance to check out the ArtsPay NJ survey, so they can have this for use as a video tutorial down the line. All right, I think we're ready to get started. So I guess I'm up first. I'm going to continue here. So I think most folks know who are here. What is ArtsPay NJ? So this is actually a long-term project to help build pay equity in the arts here in the state of New Jersey. And it's really what's unique about it is it's coordinated by art service organizations of all sizes and shapes across the state. And that's actually where it came from a group that we have of art service organizations that's organized by the New Jersey State Council on the Arts. And that community practice really led to this conversation and other conversations that happened at retreats, and out of it came the idea of the ArtsPay NJ. And sort of the first action here is this snapshot baseline compensation study, and it's a place for us to get started with this longer term project. And knowing full well what we're good at and what we need help with, we of course brought in some experts to help us do this research, and that's where David and his team at Baker Richards come into play.
Hi, so who is Baker Richards? Well, Baker Richards, we are a leading international provider of consulting, research and software for the Cultural Centre. We've been around for 20 years now. This is our 20th anniversary year. So in that time, we've now worked with more than 750 organizations worldwide, including many leading visitor attractions, performing arts venues, festivals and strategic funders across the UK, Europe, USA, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. So a fair kind of list of clients now. But also importantly, we have a kind of multi-year track record of undertaking various in-depth sector research, including the arts pay surveying that we did with our sister company, Arts Professional, which if we jump to the next slide, it gives you a snapshot of the last one that we did in 2022. Which you can download. It is publicly available. Arts Professional is in the UK, one of the UK's leading arts management journals. And the report really is both a kind of findings from the data analysis relating to pay, but also it covers the kind of the stories of, well, what we described as struggles, inequities, challenges, career progression, insecurity, precarity, poor terms and conditions, and the kind of overall picture of the survey from all of the kind of free text comments that were then provided from that as well. And I think that part of the kind of the point of all of this is to get both that snapshot of the data and the findings from the numbers themselves, but then to kind of paint the picture and get a much richer understanding of the sector from everybody's kind of input and stories.
So why this project is important. I'm sure many of you know that we've all filled out many surveys over the years, national as well as regional, and New Jersey's issues just don't seem to be really captured. I don't know about you, but I get constant questions from colleagues, from trustees about compensation data, and we just don't seem to have really accurate full picture. For both, and without that, it's hurting our organizations, it's hurting our field, and we really need to be transparent. That, as we all know, is the first step towards pay equity. And we want to keep people in our state and in our sector. And certainly low compensation, as we all know, is one reason why people might leave the state or leave our sector. So most organizations, we're all trying to do our best, but this New Jersey specific data will really help key decision makers. It will assist our board of trustees. It will certainly educate our funding partners as we are continuing to assess our own pay policies. And as we all know, systematic oppression creates wage gaps. And we've got to see those gaps, understand them before we can start to fully address them as a field.
So you might be saying to yourself, wait a minute, didn't I just take this Arts Pay NJ survey? And that's true. Hopefully the folks that joined us this morning, the folks that are seeing this video have taken part of the Arts Pay NJ survey. The group of art service organizations that are helping, steer this, what we really loved about Baker Richards' approach was that it was a dual track approach. So most of you have hopefully taken the survey from earlier this summer that was designed to be filled out from your perspective as an individual, right? From your perspective as someone who works in the arts and creative sectors here in New Jersey. So folks like arts administrators, artists, et cetera. And you were really filling that out from a perspective of how you view it individually. This second survey, the one we're going to be talking about today, is filled out on behalf of the arts organization. So we have both the individual worker survey and the organizational survey. And the organization survey is trying to capture from that perspective, right? From the umbrella perspective of the organization, the folks that those organizations are paying, because we're not going to be able to capture everybody in the individual survey. And the two pieces of information, as I'm sure David will touch on, really work together to give us the analysis that we need.
So how do you get started? Well, as Adam just mentioned, this particular organization survey is filled out by one individual at your organization. That might mean the finance director, the executive director, perhaps a human resources director, if your organization has one, a general manager, but it is one individual at your organization who has access to your payroll information. The length of time that it will take you to complete the survey certainly depends upon the number of employees and 1099s that you have at your organization. So I can just tell you, we did it for the Theater Alliance and it took about 20 minutes. We're a smaller organization with a staff of 7 and about a dozen contracted workers. But the first thing I did was just gather all of the payroll information in one place, and that just made the job that much easier. You can also download a PDF of the entire survey, so you can actually see the survey and the questions that are going to be answered to help you prepare. You must have at least one paid staff member at your organization in order for you to participate in the survey. If you don't offer benefits, we still want to hear from you. We know a lot of organizations might not be offering payroll employee benefits. Rather, please do not let that deter you from completing the survey. The only criteria is that you actually have at least one paid staff member at your organization in order for you to participate.
So thank you, John and Adam and David, for that great introduction and overview. David and I are going to sort of shift into the official technical assistance piece of this webinar now, where we're really going to walk through question by question so you can see what to expect. But as you know, when you get started, we suggest going to artspaynj.org. That page has a link that will take you directly to the survey. It also has a link to some frequently asked questions that we can share later. When you get into the organizational survey, we recommend that right away you download the spreadsheet and take a look at that. We'll walk through that spreadsheet so you can see exactly what you'll expect. And as John mentioned, if you'd like, there's a place where you can download a PDF preview of the entire survey to see the questions in advance. So the organizational survey, it really has two parts. It has some broader questions, things about benefits that you offer, the size of your organization, budget, things like that. And then there's the spreadsheet. So the way that we're going to proceed today is I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen in a moment, and David is going to share his screen and actually go into the actual portal and walk through that. When we hit the moment where you have to upload the spreadsheet, he's just going to upload kind of a stand-in spreadsheet. And then once we get through the broader, more general questions, we'll loop back and we'll walk through the spreadsheet column by column and answer any questions that you might have. So David, if you're good, I will stop my screen share and you can share yours.
Let me take over. All right, so hopefully seamless transition. We should now all be seeing my screen. So this is the opening page of the survey. You can see that there's quite a lot of information on here. That's kind of what we've already been talking about. But as Erica said, that you have the ability here at the start of this to download the salary spreadsheet, which you'll need to download to then upload it back into the survey on the next page. And you can also download a PDF of the kind of entire survey questions if you like as well. You can also get back to the individual survey to fill that in as well if you haven't already done so, or if you want to pass it on to any other staff members to encourage them to fill it in if they haven't filled it in as well. So that is still open. At the moment, we're saying to complete it by August 11th. And as we go through, that may extend, but that is the current deadline. So next is the kind of first page of the survey, where we'll ask us some kind of basic information about your organization. So I'm just going to type in, for now, something so that it gets through, and I don't have a zip code given that I'm based in the UK, so I'm going to have the conveniently numbered 12345. We'll ask for your job title as well, just so we know who is filling out these surveys on the part of the organization. And then really just to get an understanding of the number of staff that we're kind of expecting to see, a little drop down menu here for a list of different type of staff that are employed by your organization. So the first one is about administrative staff, and you can see here the drop down goes from none through to more than 500. So just roughly find the number that would apply to you for any of these in terms of contracted freelancers, unpaid interns as well. We're also asking about to understand what the mix is across organizations, and volunteers as well. So kind of just, I guess, covering all bases here. When then it comes to uploading the survey, so this is the survey, the survey spreadsheet with the salary information, which Erica will walk you through in a moment. If you haven't downloaded it on the first page, don't worry, you can download it again here. But then you would kind of browse, find the spreadsheet on your computer, which I'm going to have to feed it something because it won't let me progress if I don't. So just bear with me for a second. This is a dummy data set, so I should just be able to upload that. Once it's uploaded, you see it there appear on the screen. And at the bottom here, we were also asking for your email address, so that the only reason and the only purpose for that email address is that if someone from my team at Baker Richards needs to contact you to ask any clarification questions about any of the information that you've provided, we can do that directly, because nobody else within the kind of the New Jersey network will be able to have access to this. So you would type in your email here, and put mine in so that we can progress. It's not a required field. You don't have to do it. It's just completely up to you. But if you do it and there's a problem, we can get back to you. Otherwise, if we find that there's a problem with the spreadsheet, we'll go back through one of the service organizations that contacted you just to say, to let you know that you need to get in touch with us so that we can then discuss it with you. Okay, then the next page, and I'm going to really whiz through these because I think hopefully most of these are fairly self-explanatory when you get to them. So there's a question about being fiscally sponsored by an organization or individual. So obviously you can say yes, no, you don't know who sponsors your organization. Again, if you don't have all of this information to hand, don't worry, you can still continue with the survey. Then there's a question around the different art forms that your organization is involved with. Again, they're kind of quite broad and you can take as many as you like. So if you are involved in both arts education, arts service, dance, etc., you can kind of tick. I mean, it's very similar. It's designed to mirror exactly what was found in the individual survey. And there's obviously space for you to be able to type in other things as well. Then there's a kind of general question about current annual operating budget. Again, it's a kind of range, so you don't have to know the specific number. And again, it's, you know, if you're on the cusp of any of these, then it's okay just to put yourself into one or the other. It doesn't necessarily need to be 100% accurate here. We're looking at kind of very broad ranges. So if you're, you know, between 999,000 and 1 million, then fine. We, you know, either of those is probably kind of acceptable. It's whatever one you would feel be most appropriate to you. Having selected that, then there's a couple of questions around how much your budget has changed and how much you expect it to change, kind of this fiscal year compared to the previous fiscal year. And obviously we know that for some organizations, fiscal years, it's not the kind of the same. So it's for your fiscal year specifically. And again, you can just move the slider. The one thing I would say on the slider question is that you do have to actually action it. Even if it hasn't changed at all, you have to click on it in order for it to register the response. Otherwise you can't progress, but it will still indicate. If you don't click on it and actually have clicked on it, it would prompt you to say, you need to do this question is required. And if you don't know, you can also say not sure for the how much you expect it to change, because one of those things that may well be unknown. And then closer to the end of the survey now, approximately what percentage of your annual operating budget is used for compensation? So again, this is a slider question, and I can probably demonstrate the fact that if you don't move it at all, it just prompts you and tells you that there was an error. So let's move this along and say actually 75% or 76% of our operating budget is used for compensation. Again, another question that asks about how that's changed, just so we can get a sense of across the kind of the sector, how much these things are changing or have changed kind of historically and expected to change going forwards. Then again, another simple question about organization having formal agreements with any of the unions. If you say yes, then you're prompted to ask which ones that you do have an agreement with. Actually, this is a required, but I'm going to click no for the time being. It's going to be quicker to get through this. And then we're very close to the end now. You can see we're 82% of the way through. This question is, again, it mirrors what we asked about in the individual survey. And from an organization point of view, it's about whether or not you offer any of these benefits, regardless of whether or not it applies to all employees. So even if only a handful of employees get them or qualify for them after a certain amount of employment, we still want to know that you have them available to those people. So it's the kind of the maximum list of kind of compensation benefits that, excuse me, that you might offer at any point. So again, it's just a very simple checkbox so that we know which ones you offer. So I'll tick some of those. And if there's anything in here that you want to add any kind of more description or notes about, there's a couple of free text boxes here for you to do that. So any comments about the benefits that you've ticked, saying that, okay, yes, we offer this, but it only applies to people who have been employed for more than 3 years, etc. You can let us know that there. If there are any additional benefits that aren't listed above, again, you can tell us about them in this box here. And then I think this is the final page, because at the end of it, it just says, is there anything else you would like to tell us about the compensation and benefits offered by your organization? And feel free to tell us whatever you'd like about it. And all of the kind of free text comments that we've had, certainly from the individual one, are just really kind of helpful in terms of understanding and building a picture. So it's not just purely about the data, it's also about how people kind of perceive the kind of the challenges of the sector and around pay as well. And click submit, and then we get to the end of the survey. You've submitted your response. You can't then go back at that point. So if you find that you've done something that you wanted to go back and change, you would have to let us know at Baker Richards, and then we could either say, actually, we'll dismiss that response and you can repeat it, or we can make the change ourselves, depending on how big a change it is. And that, I will stop sharing and hand back over to Erica.
Great. Adam, I don't know if anything came through the Q&A specific to that before we move to the spreadsheet.
So just a question here about, and I did answer it here in the chat, but I think it's worth saying out loud for the tutorial, which is the difference between part-time and full-time, how many hours per week. So I believe it's 25 plus hours is considered full-time. But I wanted to make sure that that was correct for the purposes of our study per week.
I think you might have said 35 plus was full-time.
Let me go back and find out what we said specifically, but I think we did list it in the survey itself, and if not, we will clarify that when it goes back out.
I believe it is in the survey at 35 hours plus is full-time.
So I'm glad we clarified. So 35 plus hours.
Great. All right, I'm going to share my screen of the survey. Before I do that, it's going to look like a Google Sheet. The reason it looks like that is because I wanted it linkable in our presentation. When you download it, it will not be a Google Sheet. It will be an Excel document, and you'll fill it in as an Excel document, and then you will upload it as an Excel document. If you're working on it, we know some people use Numbers, I think it's called. That's fine. You just need to save it as an Excel when you upload it. But for now, it's going to look like a Google Sheet. Okay, so when you open the spreadsheet, there will be 2 tabs at the bottom. This is true whether you look at it in Excel or in Numbers. What we're looking at right now is this intro tab. And we do recommend just giving this a glance, reading through it, giving yourself the reminder before you start. But as we know, we'll need to provide salary information and employment terms, which we'll talk about what that means. It's really only for arts workers. So even though you may have some folks that are 1099 contractors for your business, or even sort of consultants for your business, only the folks that are really arts workers are included in that. So you might have a 1099 teaching artist, absolutely an arts worker. The caterer that caters your opening night or your opening reception, not really an arts worker, so you don't need to include them. You absolutely may have several workers that work on the same terms. Where, John and I are coming from the Theater Alliance, we have many members who employ 10 to 50 actors a year on the same terms. As we go through the spreadsheet, you'll see you don't need to put in 50 separate lines for actors. There's a way to kind of aggregate that. But you will have, if you have folks that multiple people in the same job position working under the same compensation terms, you'll just put them all in one row. If you do need to copy things down, just a reminder that in Excel, you can pretty easily grab the little caret in the corner of a cell and drag it down so that you don't need to physically type things over and over again. We do want you to include paid interns. So you saw as David was going through, we do ask about your number of unpaid interns just because we're curious about that within the sector. But if you have an intern or a fellow or an apprentice or whatever you call them, and they are paid, we want them included. And you'll have the chance to note whether they're paid on payroll or as a 1099 employee. If you pay the same worker different rates, whew, so I used to be an education director. We had teaching artists that were paid one rate for instructional time in a classroom, one rate for prep time, one rate for meeting time. We don't want you to have to write that out in 3 different columns. We would encourage you to enter the highest hourly rate or project rate or however it's structured at your organization. And then there's a notes column in the section where you can add any kind of nuance like, oh, hey, this person actually gets multiple rates for different kinds of work within the same job position. If somebody is a teaching artist and they work in your box office, that would be 2 different positions. So this is really important, and I'll show you again when we go to the next tab. At the top of the spreadsheet, there are, I think, 6 or 7 rows that are grayed out and they're already filled in. Those are just examples because we know not everybody is going to attend a technical assistance webinar or pick up the phone and call somebody at their service organization to be able to understand the details of the spreadsheet. So those are really in there just as examples. You can leave them alone and just put your stuff underneath it. You can delete those columns, I think. Maybe they may be locked so you can't delete them, but you they're just for your information and to give you some examples of different kinds of positions and the ways that you would want to enter them. And again, you've got a notes column so you can, anything that's relevant, anything that you feel like isn't quite captured or you want us to know, you can put it in there. You can also leave it blank if it feels pretty straightforward and there's nothing that you need to add. And as we noted, you'll upload it as an Excel. So then the spreadsheet itself looks like this. This one is, I have these frozen just so that you can see it more easily on this spreadsheet, but that is not the case, I don't believe, when you download it as an Excel. Let's ignore these for a moment. We're going to come back to them. So across the spreadsheet, you've got the sort of main field at the top, and then hopefully these underneath just give you a little bit more detail, a little bit of a reminder of what we mean when we say that. So we can actually go through and I'll do a very simple employee as an example. I hate typing in front of people, so I'll just do my best. So let's imagine that you're a small arts organization, you have 1 employee, it's your executive director. So their job title is executive director. So then the type of worker, this is a drop down, and there are only 2 choices. One is that they're an employee working on a W-2, which means you're paying them through your payroll system, taxes are taken out of their checks, or they're a freelance or contract worker, so they're paid on they get a 1099 each year, no taxes are withheld from their paycheck, and you can choose which of those are. So in this organization, let's say that they're on salary, they're paid through payroll, so they are a W-2 employee. In this imaginary organization, we only have 1 executive director, so you would just put 1. The work area, this is also a drop down, and it's a long drop down, and you're going to do your best. So we know that if you're an organization with 1 employee, probably this person does all kinds of things, but I would probably choose administration if it's the executive director. Terms of employment, So this is where we get to the full-time or part-time or project-based. So again, full-time, 35 plus hours a week, part-time, less than 35 hours. Project-based would be for an employee, let's say, again, for a teaching artist that's teaching a residency, and they're going to get paid at completion of that residency on a 1099. So then you would choose project-based. So for this executive director, we're going to say they're a full-time employee. The compensation terms. So this is basically how often they are paid, or how their compensation is, sorry, it's not how often they're paid, it's how their compensation is calculated. So you might have somebody who is paid $20 an hour, and each payroll period, you're calculating how many hours they worked, and that's their check. So that would be hourly. Somebody might have a day rate. They come in, they're working for you, they're getting $100 a day. Somebody might be on a weekly rate. I know often with actors, it's a weekly rate, bi-weekly, monthly, annual, or per project. Annual is probably what you're going to choose if you've got somebody who's a full-time W-2 administrative employee of your organization. So let's say for this executive director, we're going to say annual. So the compensation amount. So this column about the compensation amount is related to the compensation terms, because it's the amount paid for the given rate. So this annual executive director, let's say they make $65,000 a year. If you had chosen hourly, right? Let's say this is an executive director who maybe works part-time at a small organization, and they get paid $25 an hour. Even if that adds up to $65,000, we would like you to put their hourly rate if you've chosen hourly as their compensation terms. Wouldn't we all love $65,000 an hour? But that is not true, I don't think, for any of us. The average number of work hours per week. So you can use your best judgment on this. As we were developing the survey, the idea was that this is what they are contracted for. This is what's in their letter of agreement. This is what's expected. So likely for this executive director working full-time on a W-2 basis, it's probably a 40-hour week. We all know, everyone on this call knows, that there are some executive directors out there who are working 50, 60, 65 hours a week. This is not necessarily the place to note that. The individual survey actually had a question about how many hours are you contracted to work and how many hours do you typically work. That's more about sort of perception than about employment terms. So most likely, if you have a full-time employee, you're going to want to put 40 hours in there. If you, as you're filling it out, you're like, you know what, this person is contracted for 40 hours a week, but I know that they are working 70 hours a week, feel free to put that in the notes section if you feel like that's information that you want to share with us. And then the number of weeks of work in a year. So let's say for this full-time executive director, they get 2 weeks of vacation. So you would still put 52 because they're still paid for those 2 weeks of paid leave. And then again, anything else in the note section. So this, for example, you might say, oh, this person was part-time for the last 10 years, and we're so pleased that we were able to move to a full-time contract this year. Sure, that's great information for us to know. If you're like, this is really straightforward, there's nothing else I feel like I need to say about this position, completely fine to leave it blank. So as I mentioned up here, we've got these first rows that are grayed out. Those are just examples. So I'll just walk through a couple of them. So for instance, an actor, this is also true for maybe dancers employed at a dance company, other kinds of actors that are, individual artists that are contracted by an organization. So in this case, I know some theaters pay their actors through payroll, in which case you would put it that way. But for this imaginary company, let's say that it's non-union actors, and they're paid on a 1099 basis. let's say for this small theater company, they hire 6 actors a year. Maybe they do 2 productions with 3 actors each, and they're all paid the same rate for the same number of weeks. And it's all, the terms of employment are identical or very close. That's where you can just say there are 6 people that this applies to, so that you don't need to write 6 different columns that say actor, freelance, performing, full-time, right? You can just say 6 people get these terms. For an actor, a dancer, something like this, you would choose performing, creating. In this company, we're going to say they work 35 hours a week, but you can, you would be able to choose. They're paid weekly. Let's say they're getting paid $1,000 a week. They're working about 40 hours a week. And let's say they each work, 4 weeks of rehearsal and 2 weeks of performances. So it's 6 paid weeks. So you don't need to do any math about this. There's no column that sort of adds it up and crunches the numbers or asks you to do that. That's all going to get done by our friends at Baker Richards on the back end as they're looking at data trends and what rises to the surface to be interesting to share. Adam, I see you. Did somebody ask a question?
Yes, somebody asked the question. Marissa asked, where can we direct questions about our specific organizations after this webinar?
Oh, I love that question.
You might.
I do. So each service organization will be hosting office hours that will be specific to their discipline. So I know that the Theater Alliance is hosting one next week. Arts Ed New Jersey is working on getting one scheduled, Dance New Jersey, and the New Jersey Association of Museums, which is for museums and visual arts organizations. You can also, at any time, you can reach out to any of us that are on this call. We do recommend going to the office hours to see if your question can get answered, but please don't hesitate if you need to email us or call us. We're happy to hop on a Zoom and screen share with you if you feel comfortable with that, or just walk you through questions even as you're filling it out. We are all very available and eager to help you get through this. Okay, so here's an example where you have 2 people or 2 positions with the same title and many of the same terms, but different pay rates. So we would like those folks listed out separately. So here you can see this gift shop manager is getting paid $15 an hour. And this gift shop manager, maybe they've been there for a few years, they've had incremental pay raises. Maybe they have a little extra responsibility, but their title is still the same. They are getting paid at a different rate. So we would prefer, if that's the case for some positions in your organization, that you do list them separately. Alternatively, if it's very close, if you've got 12 gift shop managers making $15 an hour and you've got 2 gift shop managers making $15.25 an hour, you can use your judgment and get a sense of, what makes sense for you as you're filling it out, and either average that or choose the one that you want. But if it's enough far apart, $15 an hour to $17.50 an hour is enough of a difference in somebody's take-home pay that we would like it listed separately. And you can see here that in this example, right, they've got 4 gift shop managers that make $15 an hour, and they've got 2 gift shop managers that make $17.50. Here's another example where someone might be doing some similar work within your organization, but actually their employment terms are different. So I used to work at an organization that had a resident stage manager who operated more like an employee, and then also contracted freelance stage managers for individual productions. So you might have 4 freelance stage managers hired per year, and you might have 1 resident stage manager who's paid annually versus the per project stage managers who are operating on a freelance basis. And again, these are just examples. This is not to say, like, if you have a stage manager, they should be being paid per project basis. We know many stage managers are paid weekly. There may be some that are paid hourly, particularly non-union stage managers. So it's really these examples are just to show what something might look like, not to prescribe how you would necessarily fill it in for the specific nuances of your employee structure. Here's another really pretty straightforward one. You've got the finance manager. They're a W-2 employee. There's one of them. They do finance and accounting. They're full-time. They're paid an annual salary. This is their salary. They work about 40 hours a week. They work 52 weeks a year, and there's no notes. Here's a teaching artist that offers that example that I mentioned of different pay rates. So this teaching artist is paid as a 1099 contract worker. Again, many teaching artists are paid through payroll in our state. So whatever is true for your organization. This organization has 2 teaching artists. They teach. They are part-time. They're paid hourly. They're paid $60 an hour. And that would be their highest pay rate. So this is probably their instructional rate. They work about 10 hours per week, and they work about 16 weeks per year. And again, as we keep saying over and over, use your best judgment, make your best guess, particularly for some, if you've got 35 teaching artists at your organization, and some of them do residencies, and some do summer camp, and some do after school, you can just make your best guess of those weeks. You don't need to get fully into the weeds and do all of that math. It's sort of an average and best guess. And then here again in the notes is where you could note that they get paid different rates for different things. David, anything you would add about filling in the spreadsheet before we open for questions?
No, I guess the only thing I would say is that if you do fill in something that then stands out, because when we do the analysis, it looks like a bit of an outlier, we may get in touch with you just to clarify that information. So if, for example, you did put someone's hourly rate as $65,000 a year, we might go, is that right? So there will be some sense checking from us at our end.
Great. All right, I'm gonna go back to here for a moment. Can you all see the slideshow? Okay, great. And then I just want to point out that on artspaynj.org, there is a frequently asked questions document. I'll pull it up real quick. So when you go to artspaynj.org, it's here embedded within the Theater Alliance site. Here's where you can take the survey. And then there is an FAQ. There's a general ArtsPay FAQ that's really about, it's a pay equity project. There are 2 different surveys, all of the sort of more umbrella information that we offered at the beginning of this webinar. But this really walks through the more technical assistance piece of it. I want to particularly draw your attention down here. It's one of the last questions of how do I enter my staff's compensation information? And this goes column by column. So if as you're filling it out, you're like, wait, what is terms of employment? You can come back and look at that. Like if you're filling it out and you're like, wait, this person gets paid, $30,000 a year, but their healthcare costs $6,000 a year. Should I include that? You can come in, you can check it out. Hopefully your questions will be answered. Again, if it's not answered here, pick up the phone, drop an email. We're happy to answer those questions. Okay. Oh, I wanted this to be full size, but you're all going to see all my open tabs. That's okay. All right, David.
So I think the important thing here is what happens to the data in terms of then any data that is submitting, it will only come directly to Baker Richards. So Baker Richards will be the only people kind of working on this who will have access to all the raw data. And so we'll ensure kind of any anonymity is kind of retained, so that anything that gets published will be anonymized in a way that doesn't allow anyone else to identify an individual or organization that's taken part in this. So no organizations will be named, obviously no individuals are named at all anyway. None of that information will be shared anywhere other than kind of within the Baker Richards team. It does mean though that if there are some kind of, so the way that jumping ahead to how it's kind of released, there will be a written report, which obviously we can very much control then what gets put into that written report in terms of anonymity and confidentiality. But there'll also be, we're working on a public dashboard. And we did something similar with the ArtsPay UK survey, where actually you could drill down into it, but as soon as you started getting into really small data sets, that actually then would potentially be allow someone to identify an organization or indeed an individual, we prevented that from happening. So anything that is released publicly will be kind of restricted to examples where we have enough data so that kind of an aggregate is not therefore used to kind of identify individuals. And yes, so as part of the kind of the work that we will do using this data, it does, as it says there, there's a kind of a written report, which will be similar to the ArtsPay UK one, which you were kind of shown earlier, and then the creation of a public dashboard so that people can actually kind of drill down and have a look and see, okay, so for this particular role, this type of organizations, or these types of organizations, what's the kind of the average salary or the average kind of compensation that people are getting in these particular roles. So it's very much a kind of you're able to kind of use that to kind of compare and look at the kind of the spread across the different roles and across and I guess across various other metrics as well that we'll include within that dashboard. And then finally, it will all be free and available to the public, as it says at the bottom there.
So of course, as we all know, the more organizations that participate, the stronger the data in this project will be to meet its objectives. And the more people that participate, this will help us move towards a more equitable and sustainable future for our sector. Be able to provide a full picture. If we're going to be sharing this data with key decision makers like our trustees, our funding partners, we need as much participation as possible in order to give that clear picture. And it also is going to help your organization really understand what changes you might need to make in your compensation policies so that you can be competitive in recruiting, hiring, and retaining employees.
So we just wanted to share at this point, before we jump into questions and answers, who's funding this work and give some gratitude where it is certainly due. So as I mentioned earlier, art service organizations across the state are supporting this both from a functional standpoint as a steering committee for this, but each of these organizations that are listed here, the Theater Alliance and Art Pride, of course, but as well Arts at NJ, Dance New Jersey, the New Jersey Association of Museums, and the South Jersey Cultural Alliance. Each of them have invested in ArtsPay, so they're all supporting this. We as well have had some significant funding from the Grunin Foundation, from the Newark Museum of Art, as well as an anonymous donor that has really helped us to make the project a reality. And the New Jersey State Council on the Arts is funding specifically the public dashboard, which I think is fantastic. As we've noted, it's both going to inform arts organizations and empower workers. So a huge thank you to the New Jersey State Council on the Arts. And I know a number of folks from the team there are on the call today. So thank you to all of these organizations for making this possible.
So what's next? So the Arts Worker Survey, as you all know, it opened in June and it closed just a couple of weeks ago. As David mentioned, the portal to for the individual worker is still open. So if for some reason you did not get a chance to complete it, or you know colleagues that you want to make sure to remind them if they didn't get a chance to complete it, to please do so. Again, we were hoping to reach 1,000 individual arts workers. We're about hovering around 800. So it would really be helpful to still keep in mind that that survey is still open, and to complete it, or your colleagues to complete it if you haven't had a chance to do so. The organizational survey that we just went through, this phase of the project is due on August 11th. As David mentioned, there might be an extension, and we'll certainly let the field know. But right now, that's our deadline. And really important also for you to share and remind partners and colleagues of other organizations that you work with that they're completing the organizational survey. The more numbers, the better it's going to be for all of us. We do have, as Erica mentioned, there are discipline-specific office hours. You can find a list of those. We're going to update them as the dates come in. So please check the ArtsPay NJ site for the latest data. But certainly, you don't necessarily have to wait for that. If you have a question, you're working on it, please don't hesitate to contact one of us. We also, as Adam mentioned, this session and all others, they're going to be recorded, this webinar as well as any other webinar we might do. So please refer to those as well as you work on the project. We're going to look at this data and the public dashboard with our friends at Baker Richards sometime in the fall. So be on the outlook for the dates when we're actually going to be able to share some results with you and show you how to best utilize the dashboard. And we're certainly, once this project is over, as Erica mentioned, this isn't just one project and we're going to check off the box. We look at this as a much longer term initiative. We want to have discussions around the data beyond the initial conversation that we'll have with David and his colleagues. We want to be able to continue to have discussions around what we're learning with the field through a wide range of future webinars. So be on the outlook for those dates as well.
I just want to note, I see a typo in the artspayNJ.org address on this slide. Apologies for that. There's no dot between ArtsPay and NJ, so it's just artspayNJ.org. And I guess we'll open up for questions.
So we did get two questions. The first is from Josh Cohen. During the beta test, he found that for some employees, tipped employees and union employees on complex agreements, the hourly rate times the number of hours seemed like the most appropriate way to describe their pay, but it significantly understated their actual pay. So he's curious about a workaround for that, or do you just leave a note in that instance?
I think leaving a note makes sense. And now that, and big thank you to Joshua for being one of our beta testers. I know that was a huge undertaking and we learned a lot from your feedback. So thank you so much. So now there's not a column that sort of does that math of the pay by hours. So I would just put hourly, their highest pay rate maybe, about the number of hours, the number of weeks, and then in the notes field, you could say, you know, either like this is their base rate, but they get about this many hours of overtime per year. Yeah, however you feel like it best captures the truth of the situation. David, would you agree or have any other thoughts?
Yeah, I think we have to do it that way because ultimately everybody has to fill it in, those two initial columns around the number of hours and the hourly rate the same way. So I think obviously the complexity of salaries is obviously something we're trying to simplify and put into a single spreadsheet, which obviously we can't do, hence the notes are really valuable. And again, if we do end up having questions about the notes or our interpretation or understanding, having that contact details so that we can contact anyone directly is really helpful.
And I believe the other question was to ensure that everybody has our emails if they do have a specific question to reach out and maybe Vince, maybe someone could just type in each of our emails, because I don't know whether we have access to do that. Oh, looks like we do.
Great. I also see a, sorry, one add-on on the emails. If you go to artspayNJ.org and you scroll down pretty far to the bottom, I think, it lists the kind of primary contact for each of the service organizations. So if you're coming from a dance company, you're certainly welcome to reach out to us, but you can also reach out directly to Erin, Executive Director of Dance New Jersey, and her email address is available there. So all of our, my email address, I think, is there for the Theater Alliance. I also see a question of, if you pay people with a stipend for a specific project, would they be listed as a part-time employee in the spreadsheet? So let's hop back to the spreadsheet for a second. So if you pay them on a stipend, let's just do it. Let's say they're a muralist. They are probably a freelance contract worker. So if you pay someone a stipend, that's likely they're a 1099 employee. They may not get a 1099 at the end of the year if you're paying them under $600, but let's pretend you're paying them $1,000 for this project, so that they would be a 1099 employee. You hire them once. They are probably performing, creating. The terms of their employment, project-based, because it's a stipend for the project. Compensation terms, similarly, per project. I'm going to pay them $1,000. It's a teeny tiny mural. Average number of hours per week. Let's say it's an 8-week project, and they just have to complete it in those eight weeks. That's where you would just use your best guess. Maybe they're, working on it for 20 hours a week. Maybe they're working on it for 10 hours a week. Use your sort of best judgment and your best understanding of the project. Let's say they work on it for 15 hours a week, and it's an 8-week project contract. And then if you wanted to, you could add any notes here, like average numbers of work per week was between 15 and 25. Hopefully that answers the question.
It's a great example, Erica. Sorry that I had to pop off there for a second, but I knew sitting outside was a gamble with someone mowing their lawn, and we were good for that first hour, but sorry. I think those were all the questions that were in the Q&A. But if, of course, we've gone over, if folks have additional questions, if you're watching this video, there's certainly ways to get in touch with us if you have questions or get stuck somewhere. We'd rather help somebody out than have you give up and move on.
One question that we anticipated getting asked, which has not gotten asked, is why you have to put the name of your organization in the survey if it's fully anonymous data. And the answer is because we're going to be sending out so many reminders about this. And if you have already completed it, we don't want you getting those reminders over and over again. So that list is the only way that we see that list is to know which organizations have completed it. And that way we're not bombarding you. But we in New Jersey we from the service organizations will never see your organization name connected with any of your data. Only Baker Richards will see that.
And Erica, just to piggyback on that comment, you're also putting in the person who's completing the data and your contact information. That's only for the reason that if Baker Richards sees something that's where they might need some clarity, it's so they know exactly who to contact. So we, again, no information for the service organizations. That doesn't, all we need and that we'll learn from is Baker Richards will share with us the organizations that are completing it. So that helps us, as Erica said, in reminding the field. But the reason that there's an individual and why we want to know who's completing the data is in the event that there's a question and we just need to circle back.
I think that brings us to the end of the organizational survey technical assistance webinar. I'm going to thank Erica and David and John for their time and effort, particularly Erica and David for taking us through the technical aspect of it. So, and as I said earlier, we're going to move to have this recording available. We'll put it up in a bunch of places. You won't be able to miss it. And I really do thank the folks that joined us this morning and asked really helpful questions that I'm sure others will find helpful as well. And I encourage you, as I did earlier, to get outside again and enjoy the Jersey summer and stay hydrated. Thanks, everybody. Take care.